Today we're going to break down some of the confusion and misunderstandings when it comes to people seeking asylum. Let's start with one that a lot of people don't understand, which is, what are the entitlements that people have when they're seeking asylum, and do people have any basic safety net? So when people come seeking asylum, they come one of two ways. They come by sea or they come by aeroplane. And for all people seeking asylum, there is virtually nothing they get when it comes to being able to survive. Let's start with people who come by sea. Do people who come by sea get anything? The answer is yes, but it's incredibly limited, and it's actually about to go for almost all people. If they've arrived by sea, they get an income support called the SRSS, which is just $35 a day, which is basically 89% of Newstart allowance, which is already way below the poverty line. Newstart hasn't actually been raised in 25 years. So if you've arrived by sea, you're getting 89% of Newstart, which is $35 a day. Now, what makes this even more difficult is that Peter Dutton has announced this year that he plans to cut every single person who's come by sea off Newstart unless they meet the most strictest of vulnerability guidelines. So what does that mean? That means if you're pregnant, you're going to get cut off income support unless your pregnancy is complicated. That is, pregnant women are going to be cut off all income support and left with nothing. If you're a single parent and your child is older than 5, again, you are going to be cut off your entire income support. If you're a family, again, you're going to get cut off all your income support. If you're a single man or woman, again, you're getting cut off your income support. And he's starting with that group on the 18th of June 2018. How much notice will people get? 7 days to 10 days at most. That's right, 7 days to 10 days at most. You might be watching and going, well, why shouldn't I go out there and work? A couple of things I'd say to that. One, we leave no other community in this entire country without a basic income support net. Why? Because we know when we starve people of any income, what happens? They starve to death, they become homeless, they're more at risk of being exploited, they're more likely to stay in unsafe and abusive situations. It's actually immoral and it's incredibly cruel. So, what is going to happen to these people? And well, why don't they just go out there and work? A couple of things I'd say to you. The people who've come by sea that I'm talking about number 12,500 people. Well, why haven't these 12,500 people's situation been sorted out? Great question. In fact, these people all arrived between August 2012 and July 2013. That's a long time ago, you might be wondering. Yes, these people have been waiting 6 years just to have their asylum claims considered. Who's to blame for that? Well, that would be successive Australian governments who have refused to assess these people's claims. Remember last year in 2017, you might have heard Peter Dutton come out and say, the time is up for these people, they've had long enough. And he introduced a thing called the October 1 legal deadline, which basically meant for everyone that arrived by sea, they had to lodge their claims by the 1st of October. Now, he lied to you and he lied to me. He went out there and pretended these people were refusing to engage. That's a lie. In fact, they had waited between 960 and 1,600 days just to be allowed to apply for asylum. That's right, up to 4 years just to be allowed to apply. And before he let them apply, guess what Peter Dutton did? He cut 90% of funding for legal assistance, made the refugee test the hardest it's ever been, including asking people to account for the last 30 years of their lives. I'd struggle to remember the last 30 days, let alone 30 years. On top of that, you have to navigate an application form that now bloated out to 116 questions and a statement. And you go, well, so what? I've got to fill in forms. Now imagine filling in a form that requires you to account for 30 years of your life, 116 questions, and a statement where getting it right is the difference between whether you live or die. Live or die. We're not filling in an application for a shared house, for a mortgage, or your tax returns. I'm talking about a form that you can't even understand because it doesn't come in the language you can read and write in. And the outcome of your consistency on that form will decide whether you live or get sent back to a country where you could die. So, what happened next, you might ask? Well, every single one of these people 24,500 people had been left in this situation. All but 71, that is basically 99.99%, got their applications in by October 1. They did the right thing. They did what Peter Dutton asked of them, because they were all promised by June of this year, of 2018, every one of their claims would be decided. And guess what happened next? People seeking asylum got shafted once more by Peter Dutton. And in reality, they've now been told they're going to have to wait till 2020. It gets worse. So this group I'm talking about, this group that's about to be cut off their income support, 12,500 people, including 5,683 here in Victoria. These people were denied for the first 3 years after arriving from being allowed to work. That's right, 3 years without the right to work or do volunteer work. When they were finally allowed, and some have only just been allowed now after 6 years, imagine how de-skilled you'd be. Imagine the state of your mental health. Now, it gets worse because of how? It gets worse in this way. One, those that have been able to go to TAFE through scholarships, through free places that the Victorian State Government has provided here, Peter Dutton has cut all of them off their income. That's right. The same minister that says they won't learn English, they won't integrate, they won't, go and skill themselves up. All these people that have gone out there and enrolled in courses in English, in vocational English, so they can integrate, so they can get job ready. They've all been cut off their income for doing so. Hypocrisy, yes. Appalling, yes. Disgusting, yes. But that's the reality. Now, on top of that, if they've been allowed to work, almost all of them have Dutton's made it impossible to even find work. Why? Well, he's only giving them what are called 3-month bridging visas. So picture this. You go for a job, they ask for your visa, you show them a visa that's good for 3 months at a time. Who's going to employ you on that? Almost nobody. It gets even worse. Most of these visas expire, and then people seeking asylum can't go in and renew them. They have to wait until they're invited to go back again. So many turn up to employers going, I technically don't have a visa, but I am lawful. And of course, Australian employers could not believe that the Australian government would actually make these people technically unlawful. Sounds insane, doesn't it? But that's exactly what's happening. The best a person seeking asylum might get, if they're lucky, is 89% of Newstart allowance. That's $35 a day. And once you pay for a room somewhere, for about $5 to $8 a day, they've got to feed themselves, clothe themselves, and access public transport. So in other words, they are the lowest on the poverty line of any community. No public housing, no access to university, no car, no nothing, no furniture, no special treatment of any kind. You could have arrived in Australia in 2012, seeking asylum, be mandatory locked up as the only country in the world that has a mandatory policy of locking you up, released with no right to work for 3 years, left for 8 years. Remember, some people are not going to get their claims decided until 2020. I came in 2012, I had my claim decided in 2020. I was found to be a refugee. I went to a regional area to get a 5-year visa, so I've got a bit more security. That means it's now 2025, some 13 years after I arrived, and I'm still temporary. And I have to apply again. That's 13 years without my family. That's 13 years without protection of a kind that is durable and safe. So our role as an organisation, again, is to be there to fill that gap, to feed people, to house people, to clothe people, to care for people. But it's critical, and it's a crisis. And amongst all that misinformation, I'm hoping I'm able to provide you with a bit of clarity. That is that we are the only country in the world that mandatory locks up people offshore, cuts people off all income support who are seeking asylum, detains kids longer than anyone else, and leaves people basically to perish. This is very much the policy of the Australian government in 2018.